I want to welcome it. Whoa! I want to welcome everyone to the. No, I don't. I'm so used to it. Excuse me.
Gavel. Gavel.
I want to welcome everyone to the Wednesday, October 25th, 2017 Finance Committee meeting. I just want to make a quick comment. If you notice, board members, if you look down, you'll see a little word that says speak, and then over on the other side, you'll see a little bit thing that says mic. And all that is to let you know that you don't have to go all the way up. You can, if you're even with the speak and the microphone is right on the mic part, it should pick it up fine. Okay?
Mike 101.
All right, roll call, please. You don't have to lean.
I'm not. Mr. Legess.
Present.
Mr. Vickery. Mr. Washington. Mr. Stauffenberg. Mr. Hess. Mr. Mulcahy. Mr. Scott. Mr. Seroy.
Present.
Mr. Hildebrand. Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Ritter. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Wheeler. Mr. Lear. We have a quorum.
I have no public comment. Just one quick thought, just to keep Mike Mulcahy's mother in your thoughts. She passed away, and that's the reason he's not here. And the wake is 4 to 8 at Clancy Gernon Hertz on West Kankakee today. So if anybody can get over there, I'm sure he'd appreciate that. Like I said, I have no public comment. Is there any public comment? Approval of minutes. Or excuse me, presentation. We have a presentation?
No.
Okay. Approval of minutes. The minutes of August 23rd, 2017 and September 12th, 2017 are completed. September 27th is not. So we'll need a motion for the August 23rd and the September 12th minutes. Motion by Mr. Einfeld, second Mr. Vickery. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Okay. Now if Steve will come up, Steve McCarty here.
Mm-hmm.
We have a presentation. Well, once again, is this on? Once again, Steve in the Finance Department has been presented with a Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. And we would like to present this to Steve. It's for the preparing of all the necessary information for our audit and the validity of our audience. And it's the second year in a row that Steve and the Finance Department have been given this award, and we'd like to give it to Steve on behalf.
I was hoping to sneak out. Thank you. No, we accept this on behalf of the entire county and all the departments. There's a lot of work from a lot of departments, not only the finance staff or outside auditors, but we bug a lot of departments for information that goes in the back section, the statistical section. And we appreciate that. The county clerk's office especially, they do 4 or 5 reports for us for that in that area. So every spring they know the emails are coming from us. So so we're happy that this is a nice positive thing, on what the county has been through financially, and I know we're all working hard to get to that light at the end of the tunnel. So we appreciate it, and we're glad to get this on behalf of the county. Thanks.
Okay, there won't be anything extra in your envelope Friday, Steve, but we appreciate the work. Next up, we have the auditor's office, Mr. Jake Lee, and I'll need a motion to approve the monthly claims. Ms. Dunbar, Mr. Payton, and we'll need a roll call.
Mr. Legess.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery. Mr. Washington. Mr. Stauffenberg. Mr. Hess. Mr. Searoy.
Aye.
Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Ms. Dunbar. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries. Oh, Mr. Einfeld. Mr. Einfeld?
Okay, Jake.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone.
Right.
Wanted to just give you just a few highlights. I did email out Diane emailed out the quarterly report in addition to the claims report for the period ending in the quarterly report is August 31st. Claims report is September 1st to September 30th. Just a few highlights on the quarterly report. We won't present on it today. It's not, it's a cash basis report. Both reports are. So basically, as a reminder, it adjusts as cash transacts through the system, and that is when the entries and so forth are made, and that. Revenues corrected. Remember at the last quarterly report, I said it would not remain at the levels it was, about 17%. They corrected and they're probably down closer to 8%, which is what we expected, and we'll see them correct again by the end of the year. Expenditures are up 9.05% relative to last year. And the thing I wanted to kind of note is that we're trending towards FY15 numbers on the revenue and the expenditure side. The unfortunate part about that is FY15 was a deficit year. So we need to watch that closely. And we think that there still will be a positive balance in the general fund from what I see. But we still need to watch the numbers very closely. So as you know, I'm pretty cautious and conservative in that. The management letter I had mentioned has been posted to the county's website, and I'd like to thank Chairman Wheeler for making sure we got in compliance in that area. There have been a lot of misunderstandings, I think, about some of the things that are required, and so we're working very hard to make sure that we are being compliant in the areas in which we can be. Very briefly, I wanted to touch on the idea of audit evidence. And a lot of times people forget that the auditor is responsible for, establishing an opinion based on evidence. And so when we request information, whether it's from our departments in terms of inventories or whether it's from anyone else for some sort of verification, if it's substantiation of a claim, we cannot recommend for approval a claim or issue an opinion or anything like that without gathering the necessary evidence. And so we'd like to thank those departments who have worked very well with us in providing that information, but also remind everyone that it is necessary for us to properly execute our position. So beyond that, we have just a few issues with claims that we're working through. We try to resolve things at the lowest level. We still continue to have things like claims are not signed by authorized persons, or they're not signed at all, different things like that. So we're working through those issues as well. So please be mindful of that. As far as the claims report for September goes, you see the trend in terms of the total amount of dollars that are going out. So I have prepared for you the month to month for the last 4 years and also year to date for the last 4 years. And you'll see it's all over the place primarily because of the timing of cash again. But once you take it in aggregate, you can kind of see how much cash the entity, i.e. the county, needs in order to conduct activities. And so we're cash poor, and we just have to be mindful of that as we go about our various activities. Beyond that, you've seen all the reports as it relates to departmental percentages relative to the budget and all those kinds of things. So we continue to work on that. We do have some personnel issues, as you're well aware of, in the auditor's office that has reduced our already very, very limited staff and, all the things we've been divested of. So we're working through that. Inventories was an issue that some people on the board even asked me about, so I wanted to address that as well. In terms of, there is a fiscal policy that's been quoted to me as being passed by the board, and in that fiscal policy, in the section that deals with inventories, it's actually outlined the responsibilities with inventories. So I do encourage the board to look at that if you haven't already, and because that is another item that's been divested of the office, we want to make sure that it's clear that we are not violating things that have already been put forward. So we're working to hopefully resolve those issues, and we'll just kind of go from there. Are there any questions that I can answer at this time?
Mr. Wheeler.
You mentioned the being down a person in your office. How's that process going on hiring?
Well, we've conducted about 7 interviews so far. We've been turned down twice due to pay. So it's difficult. Hopefully we will have someone in place in the next couple of weeks.
Is there a specific skill set that you're looking for, or certification or anything?
Yes, it's all posted online, and I can certainly provide the job descriptions and so forth, but you definitely need some sort of business acumen, accounting, auditing, that kind of thing.
So not necessarily a CPA?
Not necessarily a CPA, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is it a non-union or a union position?
Currently non-union is posted. Yep.
Now, do you have any budgetary requests for this committee? Because we're doing budgets right now, and I hadn't seen that on any agendas. So is that something you had sent to Steve, or I know you gave me something, but he sent an email out. Is that replied to and gathered by Steve?
Yes. I submitted all that information, not only to you in a personal meeting, but also to Steve and yourself via email.
Okay.
Yes. And the budget number that we're asking for is $124,000, a little over $124,000. And that will allow us to actually have the staff we need, obviously, and also to run the office. If you look at the numbers from FY16, the previous auditor actually went over budget because the union position that was there and the auditor's salary and the few office supplies and things you need, there just wasn't enough allocated. So it was about $1,600 or so over budget if you look at the CAFR.
Do you remember what the budget is for this year? I don't have it in front of me.
The budget for FY17 remained as the old budget. It was $105,000 allocated to the office.
Okay. 105 to 124. Okay. And I'm just trying to get my arms around this because we won't have an opportunity to talk before we start meeting on budgets, and we do that kind of stuff with this committee. When we look at, this is specifically came from the department head meeting. I'm having a lot of departments are asking about for our help in ordering office supplies because they were told that you weren't going to be able to order them while you were shorthanded. And so I want to at least verify that and make sure that that was accurate, and that we should be telling department heads to order them and then build the central services, because I couldn't answer that question directly, because I think that's what I think this committee would want, because that's where we're supposed to go. But I was just trying to clear that up, because a lot of the department heads were having some issues.
So obviously, as far as resources is concerned, I'm an office of one, and frankly, waiting for me to place the orders for individuals and perform clerical work to that extent is going to be a delay, and people will need things to operate their office. So my advice to them has been to order the supplies, and then it should just be a journal voucher to account for it as far as the system goes with central services. the practicality of central services right now is not there
Because of staffing level.
because of staffing.
And
yes.
that existed with two people, rather, even, it was tough with two, right?
It was tough with two. It's impossible with one.
Right.
Yes.
I would agree. And it's tough. Now, we talked about changeover audits in the past, and which are statutory requirements, even though we can't tell where the county had ever done them before. That doesn't excuse it. It needs to be done. You didn't perform those audits, though. The county went out. I'm speaking kind of like I know what the answer is, but we went out and hired someone to do the sheriff's office, and we still have to do that for your office and for the state's attorney and for the treasurer's office. But you can't do those. We have to have a CPA to do that, correct? I just want to verify that. We can't do them internally unless there's a CPA.
By statute, there has to be a CPA to do it.
Okay.
And in this county, as far as I know, there hasn't been a CPA as an auditor. I am pursuing the hours to become a CPA.
Okay.
I have the hours in terms of you need 150 hours to become a CPA. I have an MBA, so I have well over 150 hours. I just don't have the accounting specific hours. So I'm working on that myself. So
Sure. And could you ever find where we had done one? I couldn't find where we had done a change.
I could not find where we have done one as a county.
Okay.
No.
That was
Had no
part-
records of it. And that was something that we brought up back in March, I believe.
Okay. Now, as far as our changeover audit on the sheriff's department, which was mid last year when he took over, were there any irregularities that were found within the finances of the sheriff's department and the CAFR this year? Were there anything that you noted, or because I didn't see anything? I just wanted for the committee to know. We did have an audit because the sheriff has very little to do with finances. They don't take or collect money beyond commissary, which is already audited by the outside auditors. For the committee's sake, there was no irregularity, so we shouldn't expect any from this outside audit. It's my opinion. I guess your opinion.
Well,
as far as-
the outside audit isn't for the purpose of detecting irregularities, per se. It is to really allow the new elected official to start with a clean slate in terms of the items that were recorded prior to that elected official taking office. So as far as whether or not I noticed any irregularities in the CAFR and so forth, I did not. But again, our office has been relegated to have very limited involvement with that. That's all the outside auditors and the finance department, and the administration. So, it's limited in terms of what we do.
Well, you can still check, though. You can still audit the finances of the commissary and different finance accounts there and elsewhere, correct?
Yes, we have the authority to do so.
Have you?
So,
Have you audited any finances of any departments since December?
yeah, so we have actually, I have put together a kind of a methodology, if you will, for auditing. I have actually reached out to some department heads saying that we intend to do that. We probably, in terms of practicality, will not be able to actually engage in an actual audit until next year of these departments because we do not have the resources and did not have the resources when I started.
Okay. Do you know if the predecessor had audited any finances of any departments?
As far as I can tell, there are no records of any substantive audits since about 2008 or 2009. And again, the auditor's office has been not only divested of personnel, where it's become very impractical and had been inundated with other activities that my predecessor decided to forego auditing and concentrate on stuffing envelopes and other activities.
I guess my final question, I'm sure you've read the outside audits of the past to get up to speed. Have you ever seen anything where any of the outside auditors who are paid professionals to take an objective, by law, third-party look at our processes and procedures and the way we handle money? Has there been anything as far as mismanagement, malfeasance misappropriation or any other inappropriate financial or regulatory, whether it's irregularity or whether it's grave or illegal? Have you seen any of those noted anywhere?
So let me, what an outside audit is meant to do. An outside audit is meant to determine whether or not the financial statements are fairly presented in all material aspects. Here's the comparison I like to give. Walmart, for example, material misstatement for Walmart is $110 million. So errors, fraud even, and other issues up to $110 million does not cause for material misstatement, which means the auditor will issue a clean audit report, meaning that they will say that there is no, in our opinion, there is no material misstatement of the financials of Walmart. Even though to us, if there's $100 million of issues, that sounds like a lot of money. The same is true for any other organization, be it the county or any other organization. The materiality of misstatements in the financial statements does not preclude or does not exempt from an organization, whether or not they are in compliance with state law, state statute, whether or not there is fraudulent activity or that. The amount of testing that happens in an external audit is much less than the testing that would happen in a fraud or a forensic audit or that type of thing. So while the county or myself or the external auditors have not seen material misstatements in as far as their audit of the county goes and the CAFR and so forth, that still doesn't mean that other issues don't exist. Now, I will say, having said that, whether or not there is impropriety or waste or fraud or any of that, that's a completely different issue. And so I would say that while when people think of the annual audit, they think that it goes to the level of detail of discovering those things, but that's not what an audit is for. It's to determine whether or not the financial statements are fairly stated. And as the outside auditors have said, and as I believe as well, they are fairly stated. Now, any other issues is a completely different subject. So that's how I would answer that.
I guess my final question would be then, with what you said, and I know there's a lot of testing goes on, and I don't want to minimize any of that because there is a lot of testing, and there are things that are found to be could be done better, and that's where a management letter comes in. But in your opinion, how are those things found that are improprieties or things that are illegal or are misappropriations? What are the mechanisms that are to be found in the numbers year to year? How do we find that?
Sure. So there are various processes that you can undertake in order to find those kinds of things. I don't want to get into the details of the methodology because, to do that publicly would be irresponsible. But I will say that it's a scientific process by which you would want to, you use a certain sampling criteria. There are other mechanisms that you use in order to discover what those improprieties could possibly be. As far as the auditor's office goes and our desire to do those things, it has been restricted due to the resources that we have. And so that's why we're working and asking for allocations to allow us to do that. And, my goal, as I've said before, is that we conduct 3 major audits and 3 minor audits at a minimum each year, along with some of the special fund audits that we should conduct as well. My desire to be in compliance with the state statute as it relates to the auditor's statute, as well as AG opinion 09-011 and 09-039, we want to make sure we get those things in order as well. And that will allow us to do a lot of the things that frankly haven't been done as far as I can tell in recent history. So we have a strong desire to do them. We need the resources to get them done, and we are committed to do that.
That's all I have right now.
Mr. Kinzinger first. Okay. Go ahead. I'll get to you, Jim.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I find it, I am new board member for County Board District Number 20, and I find this line of questioning very interesting, answer and question. Is there a procedure by which if some impropriety is noted, that someone can bring that to someone, or what precipitated this kind of conversation?
That's to me.
I'm asking anybody that can answer. The two gentlemen,
Well,
I can answer part
Andy
of it.
was doing the questioning,
If
so
there is impropriety, the first step would probably be our new ethics committee that would look at that. I think that maybe the notation would come to the finance committee. If it's a department head who has done something that's either unethical or misappropriated, it would be, it's a matter for either the state's attorney to look into, or it's a matter for the ethics commission to look into. So there is mechanisms now, or both, and it may one to the other. Good point. It could be both. So that's the mechanism to find out exactly what that needs to be.
okay. Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Am I on?
Yep.
Isn't it true that the outside auditor also looks at process and examines process in various areas? My question to Mr. Lee.
Yes. So, Mr. Vickery, I will say that as far as the specific process of the outside auditor, as I stated in a previous meeting, I was not a part of that audit, so I don't know what their specific methodology is in terms of what I would do and kind of the things that I would test for. And in general, auditors do test for internal controls, right? That is a requirement to test for internal controls, but I would say that the testing for internal controls is only part of the audit evidence that you would have to gather in terms of coming up with your opinion. Now, again, with outside auditors, the perspective is different, that it's whether or not the financials are fairly stated. It's not whether or not your internal controls are effective. It's not whether or not you're following processes and procedures. It's not whether or not you're compliant with state statute and state law, or federal for that matter. It's whether or not the financials are fairly stated. And that is a huge difference than I think what some people think about when they think of the term audit.
I can recall one of the audits in the city, when I was on the city, the outside auditor found a problem with the length of time that cash laid in our drawers in our sewer department. And they criticized us in a management letter, and we took actions to correct that. So I'm saying that the audit is more than numbers, it's also about process.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would actually echo that. I know that as I read the past audits, there was a time that our auditor found that we were not complying with federal laws as far as grants go. And we had to change our entire process, and Mr. Vickery was on the board then. That was one of the things of the holes that our finance department helped dig us out of, was setting up those processes to be able to make sure we're in compliance at that time so we didn't have to pay back all of the grants. So that was, I would say that I disagree with that assessment of what the audit is in a pretty big way. We do get that quite a bit. They look at our labor contracts to make sure we're in compliance with labor contracts. If they find something that's outside of that, they note that, which was in the information that they gave to the county board. It wasn't in the management letter, but it's something they said we needed to address and look into. So I think that the perception that the outside audit is not complete and a valuable tool and full of information and full of checks and balances, I think is a gross mischaracterization of what we do here, in my opinion.
And if I may, I have made no such assessment, so I'm not sure where that perspective is coming from, but I am presenting the known auditing standards and what an outside audit is. And I've taken many courses. I hold an MBA, and I'm not ignorant to this fact. I will say that an outside audit is restricted and it's restricted by certain elements that I've outlined already, among many others. But it is very useful. It is a great tool. When I make comments about revenues exceeding expenditures, that actually comes from the audit. It's actually in the CAFR when you talk about the governmental activities, what money we bring in and what money goes out. We have been over, maybe not in the general fund last year because it was 19,000 and some change to the good, but we have many other funds. And when you bring all the governmental activities together, all the revenues associated with those activities and all the expenditures, we were over last year as well as we were the year before, the year before, and the year before. So that is why I always caution people when we talk about the finances to make sure we take it all kind of as a corpus of material and not just piecemeal it as we, as sometimes when I'm in the community and elsewhere, I kind of get the sense that people want to do. So the outside audit, the outside auditors, and all of that is very valuable, very useful. It's required and it's good information, which I do review. But it is restricted, and so is, frankly, the things that in the past the auditor's office has been unable to do due to restrictions placed on it, budgetary restrictions that were just unsustainable. You just could not function in that office, and it kind of played out. Now what we're requesting is that we have the resources to execute. Being able to perform all of our statutory duties is another discussion, and it's been a lot of heartache, and I understand that, and I get that. But I believe that this office, as being elected, a constitutional office, is responsible for the things in that statute, and therefore we want to make sure that we execute on those items, but we need the resources to do so.
Okay. Anything else? Mr. Vickery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would just make a note of the fact that I've been exposed to 35 audits, 35 years. So I gleaned a little bit of information from that. Thank you.
Okay. My question is, Mr. Lee, once you get the person hired, will you then go back to ordering for everyone, all supplies?
Yes, our goal is to get a process back in place. We need to actually do a little deeper dive with Central Services. There's some issues with the way it was set up, the execution of the previous auditor and deputy, that I don't believe it was executed as it was designed. So we're going to review that, and then we will report on the real savings and things that I think Central Services was designed to achieve.
Anyone else? Okay.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Insurance, HR. Mrs. Mackin. We also have an insurance update. Hi, David. How are you? Yep. Huh? No, but you have a speaker.
Good morning. All right, should we do staffing report first? Everybody had that out? This covers October, September 27th through October 24th. And kind of in the middle, you see where the total staff count was as of last month. And then over to the far right, we have our additions or reductions from that happened during this month's time. So starting out in the administration staff, we have one full-time employee that's been hired, and that's for our ADA compliances, and that takes that count to 4. Circuit clerk has lost one full-time employee, taking their count to 33. The county clerk has hired one full-time employee, now staffing at 11. Highway Department lost 1 full-time employee, taking that count to 30. Maintenance hired 1 full-time employee, taking their count to 12. Planning has hired 1 full-time employee. Planning's count at 8. Recorder has lost 1 full-time employee, taking the count down to 4. Sheriff Deputies has hired 2 full-time lateral deputies. So total deputies is 44, plus, of course, you have the sheriff there. And then in Corrections Division, we have correctional officers hired 3 full-time employees this month. Their count now at 117. True count is 119, but they have 2 that are on an unpaid leave. Sheriff medical staff hired 1 full-time employee, now their count at 15. And state's attorney lost 1 full-time employee and hired 1 full-time employee, so that count remains at 33. So at the bottom of your current staff column, you see it's 510, and that takes us to a full-time equivalent of 459.
Yes.
Just for clarification, there was an addition in administration. The ADA coordinator, which is part of our ADA issues with the Attorney General, but that is a sliver of the job. The rest is doing, once the training is finished, we'll be working with Workforce Board, WIA stuff, processing invoices, doing things as far as helping them. That's how we're getting part of that salary taken care of, is to relieve some of that stress, because we lost obviously a 15-year employee who was the gatekeeper on all of that. So we need bodies to help fill that out, and they're also a fill-in for when people have sick days in administration. Because right now, if heaven forbid Diane is not able to attend a meeting, we get to see Joanne come back in the room, but then nobody's doing payroll. So if you see my point, we have a floater for up there, but we also are able to help subsidize that position with work for the Workforce Board. So.
Good. Anybody else have any questions on staffing? Okay.
All right, we have David Underkoffler from Clemens and Associate with us today, who's been working on going out to bid for us. We're not quite there yet to report for whatever our new insurance plans are going to be for the upcoming benefit year, but he is going to give you some updates of where we stand as a county.
Okay, I think everyone should have the a copy of the claims report there. It says premium versus claims incurred, including IBNR, incurred but not reported claims. I think when we talked last time, we looked at what our loss ratios were, and in summary, since that last meeting, our claims have gotten worse. So if you look at the columns we have here, we just have the year and the month, the members, that's the total amount covered. So that is not only your employee, but if they're covering their spouse or their dependent or something like that. The subscriber, think of that as your employees that are covered. Then we have the premium that we're paying into the fund. The premium based on a per member per month. They're just dividing those numbers out. We have our medical payments. We have our capitation payments for the HMO piece. We have our pharmacy payments, and then we have total payments. So then if we look at our claims to premium, we can see what our loss ratios are. So then they also have their total payments per member per month, and then our 12-month rolling average on a per member per month. So I think last time we were here looking at some months, and going to like in January, for example, I think we were looking at the third column from the left at an 89% loss ratio. The next month it went down to 56% loss ratio. The next month it was 87% loss ratio. Those are all good. But then it kind of turned on us. We have 101.5%, 80 or 96.7, 111, a 220% loss ratio, and then a 79.9%. So last month was good, but we had a lot of bad months in there. So when the renewal came out from United Healthcare, they were asking for a 28% increase to keep our plans exactly as they are. We've since taken that out to bid. We're looking at other insurance companies. And we have some quotes out there, and we'll be looking at some alternatives. Also add that the second piece that the second sheet that we've given everybody there are our claims. And we have it by how much the claims are. And you can see we had one claimant between $350,000 and $400,000, and we had one claimant between $300,000 and $350,000. The good news on both of those pieces are we are told by United Healthcare and their underwriting department that one of those claims is gone. They don't expect anything else on that one. And then we had another issue where we've had somebody now who's moved to Medicare as primary, and so Medicare will be taking the lion's share of that and leaving us. So both those claims, hopefully we were paying a little bit on the Medicare claim, but not nearly as much as we did. So that is a little bit of a good news, I guess, on those two. When we first got the renewal, we didn't have both that information. Since then, we have that information, so that has helped out a little bit in the renewal. We started at 28% with United Healthcare. We searched other companies. Right now, I'd say when we're looking at companies, we're down between Blue Cross and Blue Shield and United Healthcare. One of the things we're looking at with Blue Cross Blue Shield is currently our most popular plan. We offer several different plan designs. Our most popular has an health reimbursement account attached to it. And one of the things with Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare does that internally, and Blue Cross Blue Shield doesn't do that internally. So if we did make the switch on that portion to Blue Cross Blue Shield, we'd have to get an outside vendor to process that part. So that's one of the things that we're looking at then. We've actually gone out and gotten a couple of quotes to look at self-funding all the plans. And so that's another consideration that we're looking at as well. All this total, we've gone back and gotten numbers back just recently from United Healthcare, lowering the overall increase if we don't make any plan changes from the 28% down to about 20%. That's keeping all the plans exactly as they are, except for we have one plan. It's a $2,600 HSA plan. We have to move that because of IRS regulations, have to move that to $2,700. But that's an IRS, keeping in compliance with IRS and the Affordable Care Act and all that, not making any other plan changes. So we're still discussing alternatives, going to come back with a couple of options on the plans, whether we'll keep all 5 plans that we have now, maybe reduce the plans, looking at making some of those changes. One of the things, for example, is that we have an HMO alternative, and for every person, for example, who might take the HMO as versus the plan with the health reimbursement account, would save the county about $90 or about $900 annually for every person who does that. So one of the things we're looking at is migration of people when they get the renewal and they get the new figures, how many are going to migrate into other plans. So right now, we have it to about a 20% increase on that, I would say, with migration and also with the HRA piece. We're hoping to have this to single digits. I don't think that we're going to get down to single digits. Right now, we're looking probably at about a 17% increase in expenditures, assuming that we don't have a lot of migration. Migration to cheaper plans would, of course, save the county even more money. So that's kind of keeping plans pretty much similar, exactly as they are now.
Mr.
Chairman Wheeler?
Thank you. So do the Blues have the higher claimants coming off, and as you explained, do they know about that as well?
Yes.
They do, and that's figured in their current number?
It is, yes.
Okay, all right. That's all I have for right now.
Good. Kinzinger, you're 10.
I'm looking at this premium versus claims, and I can see the problem. Is there a pattern? Is this typical? Is there anything that we can do in terms of changing work habits, types of, I don't know, I'm just asking. Have we looked at that aspect in terms of maybe making everybody stand up and swing their arms around twice a day or anything of that nature? Has any of that been looked at?
Yeah, the fair questions. And first off, it's not atypical to see a few, like 10% of your group driving a huge portion of your claims, and you're in that, and that's basically what we're looking at. We have discussions with United Healthcare looking at programs, for example. Big things try to get people with chronic illnesses, for example, to make sure that they're continuing their care and getting appropriate care for them. We do have some of those in place. The problem is that those take a while for those benefits to start showing up. And sometimes they're more successful than others, but yeah, we're always looking at those options.
Any other questions? Any other questions? Mr. Stoffenberg, are you 12, I think?
I am.
Okay. Not age-wise, I meant number.
I'm a lot older than 12. Blue Cross and United Healthcare are the only players today.
That's what we kind of have it narrowed down to at this point when we went out and just checked the market.
Because of the loss ratio, you think?
You did that.
Yes. Yep. And what they were able to offer for the community.
Yeah, we got to be able to offer both hospitals, don't we? So that's one issue we run into in the past.
Yeah.
So.
Yes.
And that limits some. Is that in our contracts, Andy, that we have to offer both hospitals? Union contracts?
Indirectly, I think
Yeah.
it's substantially similar coverage.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, they kill us on that.
And for example, United Healthcare in their HMO product has both hospitals.
Right.
Blue Cross Blue Shield has an HMO product, but doesn't have Riverside in that hospital, but they're doing their PPO. So we would still offer multiple, options for the folks.
Has the Affordable Care Act affected any of this, do you think? This indecision about it all? And
We can only go on what we know as far as the law is right now. So yeah, I'd say, the renewal, and they're looking at claims data and so forth, it's a few months back. We don't know if any changes are, going to take place, and if they get through, then we'll deal with it then.
Yes.
Yeah.
An associated question to piggyback on that. Is there any number that's been added to trend because of increases in, costs because of the Affordable Care Act and so, people pulling out of the markets and being dumped back on other plans? I'm just curious if, like, as an industry speak, they're saying trends now 4% higher because of X?
Yeah, I haven't seen anything where it's just because of the Affordable Care Act. It's affecting different markets differently. You hear a lot about, a lot of big rate increases like in the individual market. It has certainly affected the individual market. The group market has been affected with some of the plan design changes, some of them being very popular, like having your dependents until age 26, getting rid of all pre-existing conditions, having your routine care be paid at 100%. All those things certainly would cost a little bit over time, but I think those are also very, very popular, with the employees.
Sure. So as far as timeline goes, we're meeting again, upcoming here real quick. We have to be back here for finance to basically approve the plan at the end of November. There's going to be some heavy lifting between now and then for the insurance team internally.
Yeah, I think we're at the point now where we have all of our numbers back. We just need to devise a couple of options, couple of game plans. Hey, here's option A, take this set of plans. Option B, option C might be keeping things as is. That might not be financially the.
That's about a $400,000 increase, so we all know. That's debilitating. So it's probably going to take a special meeting to approve this plan. I'm just letting everybody know it's going to be a committee of the whole type thing. So we may, I don't know if we want to make finance a committee of the whole. We'll talk more about that later. So we don't have 2 meetings next month, but we'll get into that later. But just to let everybody be prepared, we're going to have to get together again, probably twice in the next month.
Yes, because just so everybody realizes, with Paylocity, so we can get everything in web benefits to get ready for open enrollment, we have to be final at the county board meeting in November.
Yeah.
That allows that time frame for everything to get loaded into electronically and ready for open enrollment from December 1st through probably the 11th of December. And then our insurance meetings will be held, we start right after the county board. So that afternoon, we'll start with insurance meetings all through that week at the different departments, and then possibly into the following week.
Yeah, and I'll just add on that for the dollar amounts, for example, you're looking at budgeting right now for the current year was about $4.5 million all in, including our HRA and all that kind of, everything for the medical plan only, not the dental and the vision and all that. Right now, as things stands without migration to cheaper plans and all that, we're looking at 5.3 million. So, yeah, it's substantial.
Mr. Stauffenberg?
How much of this rate increase is trend that, we really can't do much about, that hospitals are raising their rates or doctors or whatever?
Well, yeah, and trend is more than just inflation like that, like raising their rates. It's also utilization patterns and new, technology coming forth and all that sort of thing. And I think they're using probably about, and right now in one piece on there you'll look at, it's really steps out. You have medical trends with hospitals and doctors and all that, and that might be 8% or so. And you have trends on prescriptions, and those are really a lot higher.
Yeah.
You can see on managed pharmacy payments, for example, on that page, I have just the changes from the current period to the prior period. We paid, when you look at per member per month, prior period, we were at $45. That's jumped up to $63. So, and some of the prescription drugs, the specialty drugs kind of classification, those have really, really jumped up a lot. So you're looking at a lot higher trends for pharmacy.
So the overall trend is more than 8%?
Yeah, I'd probably say probably more than 8% right now.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In talking with some people who are employed by one of Momentus' largest employers, CVS no longer honors Blue Cross Blue Shield. So should that be part of our considerations?
Yeah, there's a couple things. So Blue Cross Blue Shield does have a couple different drug card options. One would include CVS, but if we looked at, for example, on administrative services only, self-insured, going that route, could look at the option having CVS in or having CVS not in the plan. I've seen numbers on that and how much that would cost on some other groups. And actually, the groups that I have where they are self-insured, I think all of them just said drop CVS because the cost was. But Blue Cross did drop them on their smaller group. On their larger group, it's an option if you wanted to add that drug card. But that would be something that would look at disruption of PPO networks, pharmacy networks, all that, whenever we would consider making a change from carrier A to carrier B.
Does the ACA still in effect on profit?
Well, not
Still,
for, yeah,
does it
not,
limit it to 15?
there is some limits and rebates on things, and not in our size group, but there are some in certain, but like for example, Blue Cross Blue Shield hasn't given back anything because they say their loss ratios haven't hit that, so they've not refunded any money on that. I think United did 1 year for a certain group segment, from I think it's like 50 to 150 group segment is basically who got that.
Thank you.
Just a couple things. I was basing, when I was looking at the 19%, when I start talking about, over $400,000, that's kind of where my head was at on what Steve and I ran the numbers. If at all possible, we're going to get down to that level one way or another. I'd like to keep it the same, but that's kind of my comment. If we're to the point in the plan where, and I mentioned it yesterday at executive, something's got to give, because we're maxed out on the HRA. We're pretty much at the top of the scale. We can't move anything around as far as the deductible we can assume and the risk we can assume as the county to impact any cost savings. Deductibles moving, plans changing, benefits changing. If employees, and that is our primary responsibility outside of being cost effective, is for employees to have a similar rate for a similar healthcare plan. It's starting to become almost impossible. And so we're looking at different ways of doing that. And one of the options is, and to be honest, is something's got to move. Whether deductibles go up, plan changes, the plan we offer everybody's one thing and you buy up into something else, We want to take what their needs and concerns to heart when we're doing this, because nobody wants to pay more. Nobody wants to pay 28% more. I mean, we started, 3 years ago? I actually got those numbers. If we wouldn't have changed the plans that we did, we would have went up 58%, going to the $1,000 deductible and to the HRA plans. We would have went up 58%. But I believe the number is we only went up 6% over 3 years, which is unheard of. That kind of road has ended. And I don't see ways in working with our consultants. I would think they would agree that we're kind of at the end of that. And we have to either, to try to keep the cost the same for our employees, the benefit will change. And so this isn't like the county's just trying to be cheap. We're trying to keep it cheap for everybody and an effective plan for everybody. I just want to make sure everybody knows that, especially the employees who might be watching this. It's debilitating to have this amount of money go up when we're so far behind and in the hole on cost, at least with finances with the county. Or if we were flush, it would still be awful, so that's all I want to mention.
Okay. Anybody else have any questions? We do have a insurance meeting on November 2nd, so we'll go from there. Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, David.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lynn. Next up is Treasurer's Office, Nick Africano. I'll need a motion to combine and approve the County Treasurer's report for September 2017, the County Collector's report for September 2017, and the monthly resolutions for November 2017. Need a motion by Mr. Washington, second by Mr. Vickery. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? The ayes have it. Mr. Africano.
Good morning.
I think you're on.
Test. I think I'm on now. There you go.
I'm one here.
Good morning, everybody. I want to start out by acknowledging a problem that I had in my office. Some may know about it, some may not. There were some taxpayers that were published in the paper inadvertently who weren't delinquent, which is a huge problem for me, for those people. So I want to offer an on-the-record apology to them and anybody who read the Daily Journal on Saturday saw that I offered a retraction to those 80 odd number of people. So I want to acknowledge that. There was a couple reasons for it. One is a technical glitch in the software, which we're working out. We have someone here tomorrow, and some was slipped through the cracks. And for that, it's my responsibility, and I apologize. Number two, hotel taxes. I know we've talked about this in the past. I'm happy to report that over the last 2 months, hotel taxes are on time and being paid accordingly. There was a late company in August, and they remitted a check for $500 for a penalty. And since then, everybody's been on time. So I think that's a positive. Thirdly, just a housekeeping thing. I talked about the comptroller's office last time I was up here, that they've yet to offer training, which is statutory for my office. I think there's 6 or 8 new treasurers around the state. They still have not been able to offer that to us. And I just want that on the record. I'm hoping before the next election, I can be trained to be a treasurer. Couple interesting notes. I just wanted to, I ran these numbers last night. We have a total of 55,223 parcels in the county. And I saw a number that I thought was interesting and positive. 17% or 17.5% of our parcels, or 9,658 parcels, pay their taxes fully on the first installment. So I think that's positive, and that equates to 12.5% of our revenue in terms of taxes, or about $23.3 million. Right now, we have $6 million that remain to be collected, which is about 3.2% of the total. And we have about 3,000 parcels that are delinquent, which is about 5.5%. And to this point, we have distributed 85.4% of our of the money we've brought in, which equates to about 153 million. We will distribute the first part of November. The tax sale will be on November 13th, and then we will have final distribution, hopefully right on the 30th, but it may be on the 29th, to close out the fiscal year and empty our accounts, get everybody the money they deserve. So I'm hoping we can collect as much of what's outstanding out there, and take to tax sale that which we don't collect, and hopefully sell as many pieces of property as we can, or as many taxes as we can. Sorry. So that's what I have for you. Any questions? I know we have something else to talk about, but I can take questions on this if. Nope. Sam, did you already have your jazz event? All right. I think the one of the things we want to talk about is Ms. Dunbar brought up the last time we were here about these vacant properties. I think we're talking mostly vacant properties is what really where the problem lies. Properties that our trustee holds that we've now taken deed to. So we essentially own them. They're now off the tax rolls. And the question is, obviously there's a blight issue, right, to keep them from looking bad, but there's a large desire to get them back on the tax rolls. That presents a lot of challenges, both there's some legal challenges to that, but what we, I think, talked about, Ms. Dunbar and I have spoken about, and Chairman Wheeler, is let's look at, let's go out and create an ad hoc committee that can look at the way other people have dealt with this problem, see if there are creative solutions. I will say there's not a silver bullet, but if we fixed 10% of the properties, it would be a huge success. I think everybody understands the challenges of these vacant properties. There are some properties, I won't say where they are, but if someone gave them to you, you would have overpaid, right? I mean, that's just the long and short of it. But there are others that perhaps we can work with. And the idea is we don't want to, as a county, continue to hold these properties, these 300 odd properties that stay on our books year upon year upon year that don't sell at the auction. And how do we create something of value to this county, and not the county really, at the end of the day, to all the taxing bodies, because we don't get the tax revenue, everybody gets it. So Chairman Wheeler, do you want to speak on this ad hoc committee?
Yes, I thought it was a great idea actually to get something together, because it is a situation that, as I've spoken to Mr. Clark, and we had a meeting with the county trustee, because like you said, we don't own these properties. It's really in the trustees' hands for all the taxing bodies. Mm-hmm. It's a perpetual problem, and it's mixed in with a myriad of other issues. Mm-hmm. This just being one of them. So to take a more proactive look at this in an ad hoc committee, I think is essential, and I think that it's entirely appropriate for you to lead this committee and organize it and put it together, because it's really on the treasurer's wing to do so. So I would suggest that, and I think maybe if there's another board member from obviously Ms. Dunbar would like to be part. If there's another board member from finance, that would be appropriate. I think maybe the head of the Realtors Association might be somebody that would be, or their designee would be appropriate, because they're the firsthand knowledge of either showing or not showing these properties and might be able to provide some feedback. Mm-hmm. And then there has to be somebody on the municipal level, whether that's now or later, to bring in to discuss, because you'll start to identify random properties that are just there. Maybe it's a burned out house that I think was in Mr. Einfeld's district at one point that you helped clean up. I remember that. that, you know, we got to get that back on the rolls. What do we do to help that situation? Or it's just a vacant piece of property that's a 12-foot sliver that's never going to be back on the rolls.
Right.
I
And
think
there
there's
are
a
those.
difference between the two, and to be able to work with those. So I think that maybe, unless you have any other thoughts, that might be a good way to start with an ad hoc unpaid committee. I want the public to know that, because we're not paying people to join a committee. This
Oh,
is,
gosh.
I know.
I
Maybe donuts. Yeah.
I think, I think the alternatives to do nothing and will continue to be in the same position we are. I have no illusions that this committee will, you know, it's a silver bullet, but I think that it's something. And by starting the discussion, perhaps we find a way. And I appreciate Ms. Dunbar sort of raising the red flag about this. It's a problem in her district, especially.
And mine.
And yours.
Yeah.
Would you like to speak to this about what you and I talked about?
Lucky 13. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Africano, because we did have a good conversation, and he reached out to me following up with the committee meeting last month. I did recommend, Mr. Scott had, unfortunately isn't here today, but he had indicated some interest, and I suggested that maybe he might be another finance committee member that would be good, and maybe you can reach out to him. I don't know if he'd be interested. He had indicated some knowledge of some creative programs in terms of, I think, what Cook County's done. And I also did suggest a realtor, Mr. Wheeler, who is also I suggested Chris Curtis, who happens to also be an alderman and a developer and a realtor, and is in a district that also is affected within the city of Kankakee by some of these issues. So I think we're on the same path there, the same track in terms of who's appropriate to be on the committee, and I'm certainly happy to be part of it. I think that we can come up with some creative solutions. Mr. Africano and I talked about community gardens, and a lot of people think that that's a great idea, and I love community gardens, you know, in the wards in Kankakee and in the outlying areas and in the other municipalities, but that doesn't solve the tax issue. You know, it doesn't get them back on the tax roll. So I think it's great if you have a 12-foot sliver, you could put a little garden on it, great. But I don't, you know, that's certainly not the solution to every empty lot, particularly in my district at least. So if with the board's blessing, I really would like this to move forward and have some conversations about how to handle this issue.
I think that's a great idea. I think Mr. Einfeld probably could understands the issue if, you know, there's a property that's available. He's a builder. I'm sure he could give you many reasons why he doesn't choose to buy that property at the tax sale and build on it, right? So clearly there's challenges, but we need to sit down and get going on this and come up with some ideas. I've spoken with Eric Blair, who's in the back of the room, who said would be willing. I know Jim Vickery, Mr. Vickery reached out to me to participate. So, you know, I think the more the better. And I think Mr. Scott, I'll reach out to him as well. If it's okay with the committee, then I will report back at the next finance committee with a constituted ad hoc committee for your approval, I suppose.
It's really it's kind of your approval. This is your baby.
Okay.
Put together, and so it directly impacts the job that you do and the duties you have to perform for the citizens. So I think that part is fine. It's whatever you put together, and I will mention that again, these properties are a part of the puzzle that we're putting together. It's not just this one issue. So once you guys work through this, there's other things with sale and errors, and you know what I mean. There's other things
sure.
this committee could really look
Sure.
into that are a major burden on the resources of the county and frankly municipalities and things like that. So it keeps going around and around, and everybody pays.
Just to speak to the sale and error, that I'm glad you brought that up. So, you know, yesterday I get a FedEx package and there's 60 sale and errors in it from a large fund. I can't stop them all, but I can stop those that are created by mistake, which are properties that go to the tax sale that shouldn't go to the tax sale. If you sell something at the tax sale that shouldn't be sold, you have a sale in error. And if you're a smart tax buyer, you'll let me know you have a sale in error 2.5 years down the road and collect 1.5% interest a month on it. So the key is to do your due diligence up front. I hope to accomplish that before November 13th so that we sell only sellable properties. There are slivers of properties. They're funny when you come across them. They're very little. The major problem is these full-size lots, and I look forward to seeing if we can come up with a plan to, you know, I feel like if we got 10 lots that didn't have anything done with them for the last 3 years, we would have achieved something. So I will report back to you. If you have any questions, I'd entertain them. Mr. Einfeld.
Thank you, Mr. Africano. I was just curious, you did have a pretty good number on how many delinquent parcels there were out there in that situation. Just for my knowledge, do you have any idea how many are slivers or detention ponds or things like that that just, and you may not have been in it long enough to have gotten a full picture of that?
I don't, but I will report back to you
I do
next time.
We run into a situation in an area we developed up, and there were some access easements left, and they were just sitting there. And not everybody wants to increase the size of their property by any minuscule amount because it will cost them $3 more or something. However, we were able to divide those two easements up that were never going to be used again to the property owners, the left and right, and at least they're not being billed out for no reason again, and they are then on those people's shoulders, and the little slivers in this and that. If there's 50 of them or 100 of them that are just billed over and over and over year sitting on a roll, maybe we could think about getting those to the people next door.
I think that's probably a great issue for the committee. Did you want to?
I would just
13.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would say that would be probably the first order of business is sort of, categorizing all those properties that do occur over and over, and, are they usable? Should they be adjoined to another parcel, an adjacent parcel? And I think that's absolutely one of the first things we do, because I see those, and we do kind of laugh about it when we're at the tax sale, like, who wants a corner of a retention
Well,
pond,
I'll tell you who wants it, which is really not good for my office, is the unscrupulous tax buyers. They want it because it holds up progress. Eric and I, and to Eric's credit, he's always looking for these and coming to me with them. We had an issue in Manteno with a sliver that, the tax buyer decided he was gonna, you're gonna pay a toll now to get to your house. So they're looking for those slivers. Right. So if we can extricate those from our portfolio of trustee properties, yeah, that would be awesome. Thank you.
Next up, we have Finance Department, Steve McCarty.
So it says speak, so I can just speak here.
Yeah, that means you don't have to move your head any farther.
I kind of do because my voice travels.
Yeah, you don't have to worry about it.
Do you have your copies? Oh, okay. Well, he's got enough in the back. She's gonna take them back, yeah, so that way everybody can get a copy.
Anybody need a copy?
Good morning.
Yeah, that's it.
You know what?
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to pass that along to you so everybody can take a look at it. Okay. The board, the finance committee.
Pass that around and take a look at it.
Good morning. I think we're ready. The first group of information is updated. The monthly first page is the HRA fund. This has been updated for 2 months. I'm not sure what happened last month, but I did not get a chance to bring it. You can see the trend in the HRA fund is considerably lower than it was a year ago. But that's the updated information. Is we were just talking about health insurance information. Stop me if there's any questions. As far as sales tax, it's been a nice positive trend the last few months. You can see in the total collection, and then the page behind that is the breakdown of the two areas where it comes in from the countywide, and then the part the unincorporated areas. Specifically, that would be county related. So some positive trend from a year ago in sales tax, and inmate trend continues positive. It just got a couple that we know that landed in the state budget area, and that's income tax and replacement tax, which we both knew were going to be we're going to drop down. We're seeing that trend already. These are all been noted for as we're pulling the budget together, but these are the specifics in the monthly trends in comparison to a year ago, just for FYI. I don't know if there's any questions there or not.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mr. Stopper?
Thank you, Chairman. Steve, for the new board members, you might tell what the acronyms are, like HRA. Elizabeth was asking me, they might not know what that stands for.
I got it.
Well, I may be wrong. HRA stands for what, Steve?
Yeah, I don't know. That's always used.
There we go.
Health.
I guess my answer holds.
Yeah, health reimbursement account. There you go.
There you go. That's what I told her.
We use them so much. It's like good question. Yeah, I believe with the sales tax, I have a description at the top there. Yeah, for those acronyms on the breakdown page, CST and CT. I don't know if there's any more throughout here now. Yeah, PPRT. Yeah, we get the 1%. That's the 1%. Mm-hmm. We get the quarter, yeah. Sure.
Okay, on that, just for your information on the countywide sales tax, it's 6 1/4, and we get the 1%, correct?
Mm-hmm.
And then if it's sold in the incorporated area, it's 6 1/4. The state gets 5%. The village or the city gets 1%, and then we get 1/4%.
Before I move on to the cash flow page, any other questions on the regular?
Any questions on any of the use, income, sales tax, or any of that? Okay. We're gonna go on to cash flow, Steve.
So, we've updated the cash flow for a few months here. I'm not totally finished going all the way through the most difficult time of the year when we get into March, April, May, June area. But it appears the initial piece that we might be able to extend another month before we request the TAW as cash flow as it's flowing and the trend of it. Some of you may recall we were talking about this October, November a few years ago and moved to December. This past year it was January, and we might actually be able to move to February for the 2018, which will save us interest. And right now we're working with 2 million. There's some budget items that we're working on. Obviously, health insurance is a major one. Before I complete this, I just want to make sure I have all the information that we're going to be dealing with, exact information, so we can go forward accurately. But just wanted to show you where I was at, to date, as we cross the fiscal year at the end of November into December, and how cash is flowing. We, as far as some of the activity that's actual in October, some of it's still saying estimated. We did pay the bond payments. The $1,623,381 is printed and paid, and also the IMRF, the $607,000 from the 3 payrolls in September. Those are both done and gone. The 2.1 million up in the inflows of property tax distribution, that's an actual number that came in earlier in the month, as we still have a couple of more. As Nick mentioned last meeting, I gave some dates, and that's an estimated amount of the remaining amount. So and then we head into the part of the year that we don't have that and have to stretch. So we'll continue to work on that, and I'll bring it back to you as I get further along. So hopefully the state is going out and selling bonds. Hopefully we'll see some money come our way when those are done. The farthest, the thing that's out the most, like income tax, for the first time in as long as I can remember. Right now, we're current on income tax receipts. We're usually 2, 3, 4 months out on that. But the one area, for whatever reason, the state is in the probation grant and aid. We did get a couple more months in, but we're maybe through February at this point with them. So they're still a few months out. So hopefully, they'll send some money coming into this and keep it going through this, critical time that we're heading into. So I don't know if there's any questions. The TAWs are paid back. The current ones are paid back, and our bonds are paid. So those are 2 major items. We do have one other smaller bond payment due in January that we'll pay in December. And then we have some interest due in June that we usually pay out in May. It's about $200,000 roughly, rounded. So, I don't know if there's any specific questions on that or not, but this gives you an idea, what's been happening, and then we'll take a look at what's going to be coming. So.
Thank you. You mentioned grant and aid. If you were put just a rough figure on that, I'm not holding you to it, just a ballpark. How much are we owed by the state for grant and aid? And to remind people, this is money we've spent that has not come back to us. So that does severely impact cash.
Yeah, we were about $500,000 with the probation grant and aid. Now they sent us about 170,000. So now it's better, but we're still north of 300,000.
Okay.
For that.
Okay. Just of note, the February it's 2 million instead of 3 million on the TAWs. Committee needs to remember that we're going down by $1 million each year.
Sure.
To be able to make things work after February, we need to line that up before February, obviously. So there'll be some heavy lifting in the budget to make sure that we can get all the way to July based on $1 million less than we're getting this year. So with all of the financial improvements we have made, we're still cash poor, and we're still spending borrowed money until we get out of that hole. And that hole is, substantial. We're getting better, a lot better, as evidenced by us being able to wait a month to ask for tax anticipation warrant. So it shouldn't be lost on the committee of the work that we're doing. And really, we found the bottom on sales tax, and without the additional revenues coming in from DHS out at Justice Way, it's had a real impact to get us where we are. So was there anything else in there that we should be expecting? I know last year we had a surprise liability insurance situation. This year that's accounted for. It's a down payment that we have to pay in December.
Yeah, I have it in January right now under miscellaneous
okay.
vendor payments. It's highlighted.
Okay.
It's bolded right now. When you see it go from $1,050,000 on our regular miscellaneous vendor payments to $1,300,000, that's specifically the down payment for our insurance.
Okay.
That changes that month.
And that switch, we saved over $400,000 by doing it. So even though it front loads a little bit of the money, it's well worth it throughout the year. So I don't have anything else right now.
Anybody else have any questions? Mr. Rickard, sorry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. How much of the accounts payable is attributed to the Joliet situation?
Right now, about $1.2 million of that amount, rounded. So yeah,
we've improved our accounts payable.
Yeah, situation. we would be about $1 million roughly if that number wasn't just sitting right now as we're working on.
So our vendors, the vendors and everything are about $1 million.
Yes, roughly.
Very good. Thank you.
So we're about 60 days now?
We are at 60 days right now.
That's a
for
big improvement.
Regular vendors, yeah.
We were at 120 one time.
Yeah.
So we've cut that in half.
Yeah.
Thank you. That is important to note that, and I'm glad Mr. Vickery brought that up. We're working on a resolution to a new agreement with Will County on the juvenile detention center. So there's part of that accounts payable is held up on, well, what are we going to do going forward? That agreement expired in December, the financial part of that. So we still haven't figured out what our end of that is going to be for basically that number. And so that's going to be wrapped up into what we do going forward. So, and also, we're paying local vendors because we made that commitment to make sure that our local vendors are taken care of, because we can't use them for our bank. That's not fair. So, obviously we get stretched out in, February, March, April, May, and that period next year. But as it stands right now, we're pretty much caught up, within that 60-day cycle. We'd love to be at 30, believe me. But we're just not there yet. So I just thought it was good for the committee to know that our payables are a lot lower, and we're making it work. So.
Well, and we're also in a better position when we talk to the banks about our TWs.
We would hope so.
Well,
Yeah.
I think we would be with, with the case where we've got today.
Yes.
Okay. Anybody else? Mr. Stoppenberg.
Thank you, Chairman. Andy, this is probably for you. Is our intention with Will County to sell it and then rent space? I would hope so.
It is part of the discussion. Right now, what we're doing is we've exercised our option as a buyout. That triggers an appraisal to see what the value of that facility is, per the agreement. So the first step is to see, well, what is the facility worth and how much of that is ours? And so that's really the first step. What we want to do is we want to have this done before we do a budget. I mean, that was the ultimate goal, is to be able to come back. There's a lot of savings for us with the option that Mr. Stauffenberg just said. we want to remain a partner in a fabulous relationship we have with those folks up there. It's a great facility. It provides an absolute necessity that we have. We have to have this type of facility and arrangement, but it has to be advantageous financially for us. Right now, we're spending a lot more than the actual what we could or should, and that's for us to work out with Will County, and they understand that. I wished it was faster. This has been going on for a while, you know. So
I just received an email this morning. The inspection's either going to be tomorrow or Friday by the appraisal in the facility.
That should move it along
that
a lot quicker.
Should move it. Start to move it now.
Okay. Thank you. I did have other questions if we're done with this.
I'm done with the cash flow if there's no other questions.
Well, do you want to do budget first?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
If you want to start out with where we're at with budget wise.
Well, the budget wise, we're assembling all of the departments. We're emailing Steve with their budget numbers. There was clarification because we're trying to estimate, costs and employee costs going up by 2%. That seems to be about what's across the board. So we had to clarify that with the department. Are you including that? Are you not? That's just the word go. 2% cost increased across the board. So that process, I'd say we're pretty close to being that plugged in. But again, health insurance is a major part of this because if it's 400, it's not going to be 800. I'm telling you that. If it's 400, where's that come from? So that has to be plugged into a budget and things like that. So there are a couple of moving pieces. There's a substantial part of this also on the general fund with the Will County situation as well. That also impacts our tort fund, but that comes next. So there are parts of this that are dependent on a few moving pieces right now, and unfortunately they're substantial parts. So we'll know more on what the whole budget looks like, obviously, which again has to be approved really at the full board meeting in November, or a special meeting where we do insurance in the budget, which I think may end up being the case.
And we're also in 6 different negotiations with bargaining unions within the county right now. We're close on a few, but we're doing six different negotiations right now. So that's,
Yeah, from my perspective, I would say we're 98% complete. But sometimes that last 2%, can take a lot of work to finalize, especially when it's the chunk like health insurance, which usually is a challenging item. It has been for the last few years.
okay.
Yeah, we're also working on all the insurance renewals right now, not just health insurance. And also the appraisal. So there's quite a few big things going on right now. So important.
Anybody else have any questions? You have some more?
Just a couple.
Are you the chairman or what?
I might have done some homework. Wanted to talk about the audit, and basically and how you handle your basis of financials. It was mentioned, when we're talking to the auditor that, I don't know if I have the actual verbiage, but we don't look at internal controls, state and federal laws, labor contracts. Is that accurate?
That is not accurate. There's a lot of work that they do on all of that. Our federal grants, workforce, and others go through an extensive extensive audit in comparison to the federal guidelines that we are required to follow. So that is, and not detecting. You mentioned not detecting irregularities. The testing is meant to bring up the irregularities, and then if irregularities are found, then they dive deeper into it. But for like accounts payable, for example, they take pictures throughout the year. We know the claims that we have to pull for them that they review. you know, I know they do cash very detailed. They do payroll very detailed, you know, receipts very detailed. You know, those are the items, the cash flow items, where if there's going to be a financial situation, it would be in one of those areas. And, you know, there's a lot of work done in those areas. And the fact that there are no irregularities means the process is working. And we have a financial policy and procedure manual that identifies who does what, and they do audit to make sure that that's takes place, so that there's no, you know, as far as who's doing what and when, you know, is a segregation of duty, which, you know, if you've ever read about anything that's happened in whether it's a private business or a government, it's usually when somebody jumps over the segregation of duty and does double up, and is usually with the people that get away, you know, try to get away with something, you know, financially, whether they're purchasing something or whether they're taking money out of the bank or whatever. So that segregation of duty in our policy and procedure manual outlining the duties and who does what is also watched very closely. So yeah, I'm not sure. I'm just assuming his lack of experience and lack of knowledge of what we're doing it brought that up. But to me, it wasn't fair to our outside auditors who have done an outstanding job and do an outstanding job. And we're exposed to 2 major audits a year, including, you know, from our outside auditors, we get state auditors coming in for our workforce funds, and then we're also partially involved with the when IMRF shows up. So, you know, I don't think that was fair professionally to our outside auditors and some of the things that were said there.
I would agree. That's why I asked the question. I thought it was a misrepresentation of what actually goes on. And I know you've been part of audits where, well, let me ask it this way. Is this a cakewalk for us, or do they put us through our paces?
Oh no, we get put through our paces every year. Yeah, it's not something that we look forward to doing, but it's something we have to do, you know. And you know, they make sure that we're doing what we say we're doing, you know, and follow through, you know, and that's an important piece, you know. And when I started, some of the board members here may remember that some of these processes were not in place, and we had federal grant agencies wanting us to repay, I believe it was $350,000, because there was audit findings. And you know, if we can't prove the money that they're giving you is going towards the program that it's supposed to, they want their money back, you know. And that money, you know, obviously was already spent on that, but because the procedures were not in place at that point in time, they're like, okay, pay us back. And that took, yeah, 3-4 years when I first walked through the door to get that taken care of. And it's the only way you take care of it is to improve and document your financial policies and procedures and what you're doing, and keep doing them. And, you know, we have done those and we continue to do that. And that's why there are no audit findings. It's not because our outside auditors aren't doing their job. It's because we're doing it correctly internally. So
that's good information. And I also had a question about the way that you account for cash or finances. Do you take into account accruals when you present us with numbers, and do you consider that as the best method, the whole picture of what the county's finances are?
Yeah, anything we do, the budget, projections, and obviously the year end is required to be on a modified accrual basis. And we just received notice, the state's now putting out there for any government entity, school entity that stays on cash is now have to convert. They're getting away from any cash reporting whatsoever. So because, and I'm not asking for more help, but because of the level of help that we now have, there's no way for us to do a quarterly close on an accrual basis and to do that all during the year. We can only do it when the year ends. But I plug in the formulas on whether it's payroll, whether it's receipts, you know, the receipts that you get each year identify the accrual versus the cash, you know, when it shows up. what month it's for. All of that gets accounted for, and in the projections or budget or, obviously the year-end report has all got the same processy as far as the year, the projections are all based on that modified accrual, so it's all consistent.
And those accruals are entered into MIP, so those are easily and readily available for everybody to have access to.
Yes, yes.
That's all I
Anybody
have.
that can touch the system can see it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Mr. Vickery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Steve, I recall a few years back when the outside auditors found a glitch in the way we handle some cash transactions, and we corrected that. So I'm of the opinion, and maybe you can help with that processes are as important nearly as the accounting for the records.
Well, correct, and the segregation of duty is the purpose of that is to attempt to not allow, if you will, that temptation. Of if there's only one person that knows or sees, and for example, here's an example that can be misunderstood. Both Nicole and I, and now Chris and I, we have access to every aspect in the system, the accounting system, financial reporting system. However, we do not have access, just because we can see the cash accounts or the reconciliation area, it's because we help everybody that needs help. But I have no access to the Micker cartridge that prints the checks. I don't have access to the check stock, nor do I have access to any bank accounts. So seeing it in the system is only a partial of what actually takes place, as far as that check and balance. So, that understanding sometimes gets, well, they can do anything. Well, yeah, seeing anything and be able to make an adjustment to anything doesn't mean you can walk away with anything. It just means you can keep everything where it needs to go. And when we spot something, we make sure it gets in the right spot, because when something gets off with the level of help that we have, if it goes on too long, and we've had this conversation with our new payroll process, it takes 3 times the amount of time to go back and fix it. And so keeping an eye on it, keeping everything going where it needs to go is just more of the fact that we have to, just because we have to make sure that when it does happen, it happens as accurately as possible, because we don't have the time to keep, to go back and fix, and to review and analyze. So the processes that we spend a lot of time on that, and we try to keep the same thing going because it's working, and we don't have enough help if it gets undone, to redo it or to go back and fix it. So it's a very important process, and nothing against our payroll, but our payroll company, if they get something new, what we found is they can throw our cash off. If some new code gets put in there and it doesn't get coded correctly, and it's not our payroll person Joanne's fault, when the report comes out and general ledger comes out, we have to watch real close if there's something new, because what we have found is if we let it go too far, we're now looking at months of payroll having to go back and redo because they've thrown our cash flow off, and that's from our payroll administration company, not anyone internally. So there's a lot of moving parts and a lot of things to keep an eye on. And when we find something, we make sure we go back and we plug it, because so the flow can continue. So
kudos to your department. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kudos to your department and to you personally. And as my experience here with the resale of the bonds and many of the other options, you've done a great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Final question. I promise.
I think you used them all up.
Has there ever been any since you fixed in the policy manual, since that was fixed by yourself, and I believe Chairman Cruz was around then when that happened, the separation of duties, has that ever been Has there ever been a problem with that? Has that ever been validated that things are going the way they should as far as the separation of duties? Are there any issues there currently?
No, there are no issues, and I guess the only validation that you get is there's no audit findings.
Perfect. Thank you. That's all I needed.
The professionals come in and it's all working, so that's your validation.
Okay. Anybody else have anything for Steve? Okay, Steve, thank you. Good job. Sheriff's Department, Mr. Michael Downey, Sheriff. Just to show you that I'm not impartial, I pull chairs out for both men and women.
You can pull that out from
Yeah,
under me?
all the way.
Good morning.
Morning.
I do have to say that I think this meeting lasts longer than the Criminal Justice Committee meeting, but it's okay. First of all, before we get started, and I know Andy's mentioned this before, I think over the course of the last year, I think a combination of leadership and our department heads have really at least, I don't know if righted the ship is even accurate, but I just think heading in the right direction is probably more accurate. However, we still have a long way to go. But I think, just heading in the right direction is half the battle. If we continue to move that way, I think things will turn around rather quickly. But kudos to you and the board and the department heads who work their tails off to come within budget and do the right things so that we can get back to where we are. And Steve, congratulations on the award. It's well deserved. So the ICE update, our numbers are remaining consistent. In fact, they are actually increasing a little bit. I am in pretty much constant contact with the Chicago office to make sure that they understand where we are in the county and what we need. I will give you an update. I don't know if anybody in here reads the USA Today, but last Wednesday there was a front page article in the USA Today regarding President Trump and looking for immigration beds. And in that article, it indicated that ICE sent out an RFI, which is a request for information, to private companies, because President Trump is for whatever reason, a big supporter of private immigration jails. However, immigration is not a big fan of private immigration jails. So I contacted headquarters out in DC. I have a number of contacts out there that we've developed over the years, and talked to an individual who actually offered Fort Kankakee to submit an RFI and sent me the information, sent it to me on Friday, and it's due tomorrow. So needless to say, from Friday over the weekend and the last couple days and the 2 hours now I won't get back from this meeting, I am trying to get this submitted by 1 o'clock tomorrow. And it's due at 1 o'clock Central Time, 2 o'clock Eastern Time. For those of you that probably know this, we have submitted 3 previous proposals back in 2010, 2014, and 2016 for virtually the same thing. And these proposals are for a regional facility. ICE's goal is to start to limit the number of holding facilities that they have out there so that they can better have an idea of where their detainees are, because quite frankly, even in dealing with them now, there's some confusion as to where somebody is. So I have a lot of the information from previous submittals. However, this proposal, they're asking for a lot more. And so I am putting those together since last Friday, and we're still working on those, and we'll probably be working on them for quite a while until we get it submitted tomorrow morning. The advantage though now is the last three proposals, we had no ICE detainees. So, they may have looked at Kankakee and said, well, they don't have ICE detainees, so why even consider them? Now we have ICE. And now we've shown that we can handle this. So, we're hoping that works to our advantage. So that's kind of what's been going on with ICE in the last 4 or 5 days. So if you have any questions on that, I would certainly.
Gee, what a surprise.
Of course you do.
What a surprise.
Is this surrounding the shell potentially, or?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And
That's what I
more.
thought. And more.
And
Okay.
more. Oh, yeah.
All right.
Absolutely.
For new members on the committee, who said that before? The shell means we have basically a building that is a shell out there that we haven't built out into a pod.
We actually refer to it as phase 3 because shell kind of sounds. Yeah. It would actually be phase 3 of our building. But
Yeah, like detainees and.
yeah, detainees and inmates.
Yeah.
So there's a difference.
And another thing too, if you want to, you need to get out of a meeting, we can amend the agenda.
I know. I'm just kidding you. I'm
but
good.
I'm just
No,
saying,
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay.
I will.
We don't want to make you mad because you're bringing in.
I don't get mad.
Go ahead.
I don't get mad. So, secondly, and these things aren't on the agenda, but I'll just run over them real quick. As you know, we have purchased 11 vehicles that are here. They are in the process of being put into service as they are completed with equipment and striping. Just for this board's information, those were 2011s that we're replacing. Our 2012s, right now, we have 8 of those vehicles with over 100,000 miles, the top end being 120,000. Our 13s, we actually have 3 of those vehicles that are over 100,000 miles, and they top out right now at 105. They are, after they hit 100,000 miles, and in today's world, we understand that 100,000 miles, we're all driving cars with over 100,000 miles on them because that's, what virtually everybody does. Obviously, police cars probably are run a little bit harder than your everyday sedan that you're backing out of your garage and heading to work. We do take care of them. We do repair them. We do maintain them. However, just to give you an idea of cost, we are replacing a transmission in a 12 that's got 118,000 miles on it at a cost of $3,800. That 100,000 plus is about the time these transmissions and everything start to go. So there's going to be some added cost on these, just to keep you aware. We have to keep these vehicles on the road so that we can adequately do our job. Those are going to add up. And, obviously I can't do this today because it's not on the agenda, but I will start it at the criminal justice meeting, but we will begin that process of asking for a replacement for our 2012s. So just a heads up for those that are on the criminal justice committee, that'll be an agenda item. So question?
Just real quick. Could that be submitted at least with the budget? So if we're looking at including that, we would at least be able to know what it meant in the budget.
Sure.
Yeah, just so we, is it 11?
11.
11? Okay. All right.
Mr. Washington?
We know how much that costs.
These replacement cars they are Fords, aren't they?
C10.
The Chevy Tahoes.
The Chevy Tahoes?
Yes.
Good. Because the Fords have the problem with the carbon monoxide fumes.
Yeah, and the Tahoes are a little bit bigger. And some of our equipment that we have now, which are Tahoes, retrofit into that. So we're able to reuse some of that equipment.
Good.
So.
Okay, George? Okay.
Last thing, and I've made the Criminal Justice Committee aware of this over the last couple of months, but our local population, as much as our ICE population and our Marshals population is heading in the right direction, our local population is heading in the wrong direction. I think overall, over the course of the year, if we were to report as they do in most criminal justice realms, our average daily population is 230. And that sounds like a workable number. The problem is, over the last 3 months, our average daily population is 270. So those are numbers, and again, 40 inmates do not sound like a lot. I mean, it's what we do for a living, so we deal with whatever comes in the jail. But when you start talking about food, medical, transports, the burden that it places on the state's attorney's office, the public defender, the clerk, and probation, as we've said before, it affects everybody. It doesn't affect just corrections. So, keep that in mind. And we'll continue to report on that as we go. And there's some pros and cons of that. Obviously, the pros are the bad guys are coming off the street. And so those are positive things. Of course, the con is that costs money. And we, ultimately, the county, is who houses these people, feeds them, clothes them, transports them, provides medical to them, and all that stuff that we're required to do statutorily. So just a heads up that those local numbers are where they are. And we certainly work very well with the state's attorney. When we have an individual in our custody who has a low bond, who has a non-serious offense, we work on trying to expedite that case through the system to get that person out of jail, onto prison, to rehab, wherever it is that person's going once he leaves. But we do work closely with them to do those things. So, I mean, we are, it is a team effort, if you will. So, and that's all I got.
I had a question.
Yeah.
I saw, I think it was on Facebook.
Must be true then.
Must be true. No, it had to do with our food supplier, and they got some high marks. Was that from ICE inspection, or?
I didn't see what was exactly posted. I know that ICE is very happy with our food provider, and we do pay a little extra for it. But if you can put yourself in a position of being in custody, and we certainly hope on all the fraud talk that we've had earlier in this meeting that that's not the case with anybody. But if you put yourself in custody and know that you're at least getting a decent meal, that's one less thing that our guys have to deal with in complaining about food, throwing their food back because they don't like it. I mean, those things all add up. Our food service is top notch. And as I often tell people, and I know this doesn't sound very good when you talk about it in the public, but it is what it is. If Mr. Seroy decides to cater a party for his family, he's going to get a certain type of food. That same food is not what's being catered at the jail, just so people understand that. They are getting top-notch food, but it's not the stuff that we get at when we cater a party for ourselves. So I know some people question that. Oh, they get the country table. That's great. That's all. You're giving them everything. They're getting the requirements they need based on the Illinois County Jail standards, based on ICE, based on the marshals. So.
Yeah, they weren't real happy when they were getting the Happy Meals. I remember that.
No,
that's when we had a lot of blocked toilets.
A Happy Meal at the jail was an oxymoron.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we have other business. We have a staffing request from the circuit clerk's office, which we're going to table. No, I'm sorry, Candy. Get everybody on here. Everybody off? Okay. You're on. Well, you're down a person, right?
Oh, good morning. Yes, I'm down a person. I have interviewed for that position, and I'm going to make an offer today that is in a clerking position for one of the judges in one of the courtrooms. So one of the positions I'm asking for is the floater minute clerk. We used to have 4 floater minute clerks and a supervisor. I'm down to 2 floater minute clerks, and the supervisor is in court every day, covering this juvenile court call as it is. A lot of her things are being pushed aside, and she gets them done as when she can because she's in court. She will be then training the new person once we hire that person. We just hired another one recently, and he is now on his own with the judge, so that's all working well. But the problems that we're having, with the new state's attorney, he's added his own collection court call. The outside collection agency that we have, Harris and Harris, they're now doing a wage deduction court call. And the city of Kankakee also has a collection call that they have in front of the courts. So the minute clerks that I have right now and the floaters, they can't keep up with what they've got. And then we're adding these other court calls on top of it. We've taken one of these staff members out of the main office to go to court for a couple of these collection court calls, but then that's pulling her away from the jobs that she's supposed to be doing in the main office as well. So we're super stretched. The bookkeeper, she's new since July. She's been swimming right along. But one of the problems she has is all these people are calling when their cases are dismissed and their bond is supposed to be returned to them. The clerks that are in court aren't having enough time to get the paperwork done to give it to the bookkeeper for the bookkeeper to then make the check and send it out to the people that are getting their bond money back. So, I mean, the trickle-down effect has been tremendous. There was another clerk that just turned in an expungement order from court that was from July. Somehow, because she can't focus on her work, some of the things, that piece of paper probably got put somewhere and then she found it and turned it in. So the person that their case was expunged hasn't gone through the process yet. So things are falling through the cracks and it's becoming a problem. I had another judge come in yesterday. There were 3 or 4 major issues in her court call with paperwork. A couple of them she didn't blame on our office. She blamed the outside attorney that submitted the paperwork on Friday. The court case was up on Tuesday and it didn't make it into the file. There's some other things that happened in traffic. Just the flow of paperwork isn't getting to where it needs to be because there's too many other things that are going on and not enough people to do the work. So I'm asking for at least 1 floater minute clerk. I was asked to find out, bring the dollar amount. The dollar amount is $24,800 for that position. And that's just my cost. That's not the insurance and all IMRF and all that. Another position that we haven't had filled since 2009 is the assistant to the chief deputy. The chief deputy right now, one of her main jobs besides payroll in keeping track with that, she also is supposed to be training the staff members in the main office and in other areas. Well, she's actually at the counter working right alongside with them because we have so many issues that happen in the main office that there's 3 that handle the main counter, but she's often up there digging in too because there's that much going on. Some of the other duties that she should be doing is helping oversee, making sure that helping out with a lot of the higher level portions of the position she's not able to do because she's in the trenches doing all these things. So the other position that I'm looking for to refill is the assistant to the chief deputy, which would also be another $24,800 position. Someday I would like to get back up to the 4 floater clerks and the supervisor. We have 10 courtrooms and these other various court calls, and we don't have enough staffing level to get the full-time clerks. The criminal courts and the traffic courts are the higher volume court calls. And while the judges appreciate having their one steady clerk in with them every day, there's all the paperwork that needs to be done afterwards and entering into the computer and just the court dates, keeping the calendars updated and everything. So even if the floaters didn't go into court, they could at least take some of the work and take the burden off of the clerk, to finalize the cases, do the dispositions, get the cases closed and ready to go for, like the Secretary of State and the B of I and all that. Any questions?
Are these 2018 budgetary requests?
Yes. And I haven't submitted my budget yet, pending
Pending
these
this.
kind of.
Do you expect to
answer.
pay it out of general fund or partially out of automation or?
I take my budget and I use every fund that I can that will allow staffing to come out of it. So all funds except the e-citation fund, because that's designated just towards e-citation stuff, and the automation fund, the chief judge and his designee are not at this moment going to allow any salaries coming out of there. But I use as much as I can out of document storage and I looked at that yesterday, and that would be around $200,000. I think I could use salaries for that. Then I have the child support. That's out of the general fund too. Part of the salaries come out of there. Part of the salaries come out of the clerk operating administration fund, and the driver improvement program. The person that does a lot of the paperwork for the people that go to driving school, we get reimbursed for that. So salaries come out of there. So it would be general fund, document storage, clerk op and admin, and driver improvement. That would be, so that's why I need to work with all of my budgets at the same time. I know
Right.
Steve likes the general fund at one time and the special funds at another, but for me to make it work, I have to put it all together.
And most department heads do. They look at that on their own and then adjust. But so of the roughly $50,000, without FICA and insurance and all that, of that 50, how much of that would you say is going to come out of special funds? Just
Well,
off the top, what is your estimation of that? What do you think the general fund is going to be asked to bear?
those positions I've not been taking out of special funds recently. I've been taking those out of general.
So that you're saying this will all be new general fund money.
Correct.
Now, is the one position is a replacement though? So you have been taking it out of general fund, correct? You said you're
No,
replacing.
the replacement that I'm talking about, that's all, yeah, that's been in, yes, I'm sorry. Yes, it's been in general fund.
So the other one is just, so it's already been in general fund, not out of special funds.
Correct.
So you're not proposing that any of this is going to come out of special funds.
Correct. Because I've got special funds maxed out with the other staff that the clerical and that, those positions are the ones that are doing what I consider work towards the document storage end of things. So the clerks that are going to court are more geared towards the court.
And you said that the chief judge was not allowing anything to come out of automation?
Not right now.
Well, I can at least let the board know that the board can allocate budgetarily towards that. And because there's a Supreme Court case that says that, but I think we'd rather not have this become a court case, is what I'm getting at.
Well, in that particular fund, it's with the signature of the chief judge and the circuit clerk, both.
Right.
So all of my funds, yeah, but the automation fund for sure specifically states that it has to be the chief judge or his designee and the circuit clerk.
But I believe the Supreme Court case was for that fund, and it was Kane County, I believe. We looked into that, but again, we don't want to go down that road. I'm just saying, if there's no more money, we can petition to have that budget go to those funds.
Right.
And we would hope that approval would come.
Right.
Because as we all know, $4.5 million in the hole.
Right.
So, and everybody's running lean and
I
without
know.
people
I know.
and missing people. So it's not speaking on behalf of the board, I guess, we have to make sure that there's money there to do this.
Right. I understand.
Does this relate to also what the chief judge came in and said, we're going to need more people because of all the new cases in criminal justice?
Correct. And the court calls have just increased, like I said, we've got extra court calls. That alone takes another body out of the office to do something else.
Right.
So basically, we're only looking at half of that amount of money.
No.
One's already been in.
The two positions I'm asking for have not been in the budget I have not been.
I thought you're replacing one. You lost one.
I lost one. That's not a part of this discussion.
It's not a part of this budget or last budget?
The one that I'm replacing, I'm not requesting to ask for that position. That one.
But what I'm saying is when that person went away,
that was in
salary
September.
went away.
Yeah, for a month. Just for a month.
Oh, a month. Okay.
The person left September 29th. And I'm in the process of, I'm asking for 2 additional
I
on
got
top
that
of
part,
the
yeah.
cleaning, filling in the one that has to be
But
filled.
the salary for the one that left for the whole year was in the budget, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah, yeah.
So you're only putting in the next budget
2 positions.
2 positions, but one had been part, well, I thought you just said she
3.
was part of the budget.
No, well, then if you're looking at it that way, then I'm talking about 3, because the one that left that I'm replacing, that I'm gonna make
Well,
the
let's
offer today.
Let's just say, I'm trying to get this straight. All right, the one that left, say $30,000, just the figure, $30,000. She was in the budget for the whole year.
Right.
So now you're going to put 2 people in, but one of them would cover that $30,000 that was already in.
No.
I don't know why I can't get that.
The one that just left is a part of the 34 people that I had, and now I'm at 33.
Okay.
I want to make that 34. Then I want 2 more people, which will make it 36.
Oh, you're okay. So you're actually going 3 people, money wise.
Not additional money wise, just 2.
You're at, but if you were at 34 and then you went to 33 and you want 2 more, you're going to 35, aren't you?
Replacing
What?
one and adding 2.
Okay, now, okay. That ain't what she said though earlier.
No, it's different.
Now we're different. Now we're going.
That's what confused me, because
Yeah.
actually, the way you explained
I'm
it, there
sorry.
was 2 people. Just
Yeah,
2 people.
you were
involved. It
replacing
wasn't
one and taking
two.
another.
No, no.
So
that's
now
not what
you're
I
going
meant.
replacing
I'm
one. Now you're
replacing
going 3
one.
people.
Mm.
Right.
And one is a replacement.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Okay.
Have you,
Mike's it. Has to be on the record.
It's on.
is it on?
Yeah.
Okay. My question is, have you reviewed or looked at hardware, software updates that would make your office more efficient as opposed to employing more people? Are there programs available?
Well, our software, we have a case management system that it involves, the state's attorney is a part of it, the probation and public defender, the sheriff has the ability to be involved with it, but we don't have any components that work together. So this particular case management system that we have, we went with that in 2009, and it was like a $3 million project to get that going. It's what we have.
Is it current?
Yeah,
Does it work?
yeah.
Are you happy with it?
Sometimes there's things that it does do and that it doesn't do well for us. But that's a whole nother.
Are there better systems?
The problem is, if we were to go with a better system, if we found one, it would be a 2 or 3 year process down the road, because we'd have to do requests for proposals and research all the different companies and.
I'm
it'd
more
be-
simple than that.
No, I understand.
I'm saying that you would look, and when you're talking to people, see if there's systems out there that work better than our system. We can always have a long-range plan and a short-term plan. Short-term is we need bodies.
Right.
Long range is we need to do it more efficiently, and this may be the way to do it.
Well, then the other problem like every other department, there's a lot of moving parts. So then what happens is legislation changes rules a lot on us, and reporting the different things that we have to report, the additions we have to report to too many people or additional people all the time.
There is software available, and I know that you can belong to a system, pay so much a month, and those updates are done automatically, and they could be done according to law. I would recommend that we look at, I'm not saying we can do it because it may be cost prohibitive, but look at improving software, hardware, and communication between the county to see if you can simplify, work more accurately. You talked about paper getting lost. Maybe that's an input by the clerk or somebody else, and it's into the computer, and all you have to do is log it. I'm not certain. I don't know your business.
Maybe if you came and I could show you exactly what we have going on and how it works, that would be helpful.
I will do that.
To help you understand.
Kevin has a comment to probably help us.
Sorry about that. There's a little bit of misrepresentation of how the software runs, but the number one thing I want to say about this committee is, or to the committee is, I think that request that you had was a good question. It would need to more be addressed with Andy, or the chairman, and then the chairman would address it with the chief judge, because you don't have jurisdiction over that. But it's a great question. And the modules for the departments, other than one department, all do work together. Not to the point where she's asking for the request, but I don't want to put it out there that the courts spent $3 million on a system that doesn't work together. It specifically does do that. But any questions you would have would need to go through the chairman. Andy has a working relationship with the chief judge, and you'll address it that way, so we don't start a whole thing about this committee is telling the courts there. And I know that's not what you meant to do, but I just wanted to jump in there.
Andy?
Just to wrap it up, it's really a financial question you asked that's based in how operationally to save money, and a very, in my opinion, unwise decision was made about 8 years to do a bond on a piece of software that we're going to be paying for like another 10 years, which is insane in my opinion. There are cheaper options out there. We've looked at the companies and how they would interact with not only our current mandates, but with what is coming down the pike from the state of Illinois, where we could pay monthly, like you're saying. But unfortunately, we're still paying a bond for something that is old as soon as you bought it.
Mm-hmm.
And it's substantial. So again, your question is extremely valid. But unfortunately, that decision was made, and it wasn't the best thing we've done. So.
Well, as far as the staffing request, can we really act on that, or should she put that in her budget for discussions with the budget for next year?
I think the purview of finance, if they, they can say that they agree or they don't agree, but she can still put it in the budget. That's
so we could recommend the additional employees, and then she puts it in her budget.
It could be, the replacement is one thing. The two people, if the committee could say yes to all three, or we believe it's 1 and 1, or whatever you think, But again, it comes to this committee approves the budget. That's where you have the final say.
Okay. Well, then I guess we want a recommendation from this committee one way or the other, or how you want to move. Mr. Washington?
Motion we approve.
All three?
All three.
All three. And Ms. Weber with the second. Okay, now we'll have some more discussion. Mr. Kinsey.
Wouldn't it be wiser to wait until, go ahead and put in the budget and look at the whole budget and see how this all works, rather than to pick individual people that need workers?
I guess it's 6 to 1, half dozen another. Yeah, go ahead. Okay. You 5?
I'm number 4.
4.
Sandy, could you work for another month with your staffing level at 34, replacing your part-time person?
There's no part-time.
Or your
the one
that left,
correct.
replacing the one that left. Could you work with that until the budget next month?
Because it's so close, that was probably the objective anyway, is to plan for it for the December 1st.
Right. And then
frame.
if budget-wise, because the budget's going to go down $1 million at least everywhere. So I hate to, and I know everybody needs this, but Mr. Kinsey hit it on the head. We're foolish if we keep putting things in the budget that we're going to have to take out in a month. I don't want you to do that to people, hire somebody and then have to lay them off, or, other departments having to do the same. So if you could work that, give us another 30 days till we see where that final budget number is going to come.
So then you want me to submit my budget then? Because I was sent an email that said that most of the budgets were going to stay the same as they were from last year. So now I'm going to submit my budget request.
Higher, $50,000 higher, yes,
Okay,
request, and then see if we can plug that in and see how that works.
okay.
I don't know if that works for the committee, but it makes a lot of sense to me.
So what you're saying is, it's okay for the replacement and then put the 2 new ones in the new budget?
Yes.
That's what I thought too.
And that, I could go for that, you know what?
Mr. Washington?
We know the figures. Why delay?
Well,
we know what the figures are.
Okay, Steve.
Just an FYI for the committee, I have 2 columns with the 18 budget right now with everybody running the same as the FY17 amended budget, and I also have a column with all requests.
That's what we did last year.
So, if you could give me what the requests are, then I can show the committee if we stayed this way, and if we do the request, here's how it adds up, and so that's how I'm doing it. So it's an FYI, maybe that would help get through what we're talking about here.
Okay.
Thank you. Just briefly, I think we see the need. We know the pylon of the work. I mean, the chief judge said it. But with such big chunks of the budget still hanging out there, that 50 may need to come in to plug somewhere else, and maybe it can only be 25. And that will be spread out amongst all departments to cover a $450,000 increase in health insurance. That's why I'm saying maybe go through the process of interviews and identifying your candidates. It won't be wasted time. Well, maybe for them, but
yeah.
You see what I mean? Be able to identify. So if it works out December 1, you can hit the ground running. That might be time well spent while we're going through this process of really knowing where we're going to be.
Okay.
That's my thought.
So I can post for them and then not hire if it doesn't come out.
And just wait, so we know. I mean, I think we're nodding, saying, yeah, we know that the need is there. Every department has the need.
Yeah.
The problem is do we have the money to do it?
Right.
You know?
Well, and I forgot to mention too that I've been offering comp time for about the last almost 2 months for people to stay after work or work through their lunch just to try to get the work caught up. So I mean, we're doing everything we can with what we have. It's not that, and I want to commend several clerks that if they are caught up on their work, they are offering to help other clerks using the additional time, comp time for themselves while they're helping other clerks. So I mean, everybody's been working together very well. It's not like anyone is causing, the ripple effect. That they are really pulling their weight. So I just want to make that known.
Okay, but we have a motion on the floor. Do you want to rescind it, or do you want to vote on it, or?
So is this to interview?
No, George's motion was to hire 3. The replacement plus 2. And you made the second, so he's asking that there be a roll call, and worse, whatever you want to do. I'm a little confused. Go ahead.
So I'm going to vote no until the budget is out, and then I will probably approve the 2 hires. That's my statement, because I don't want her to hire 2.
Well, that's what I'm saying.
Right now.
A no vote isn't. We're not really disagreeing with what
Right.
you're saying.
No, and that's why I want to clarify.
saying-
I agree. You need 2 people.
Right.
I just
do
want to
too.
see where the budget falls, and then we'll work that way to get your 2 people. But I think for this vote on the floor, I'm going to vote no.
I agree. Roll call. You too, or what? Your roll call.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Legess.
Nay.
Mr. Vickery.
Nay.
Mr. Washington.
Aye.
Mr. Stauffenberg.
Nay.
Mr. Hess.
Nay.
Mr. Seroy.
Nay.
Ms. Weber.
Aye.
Mr. Payton. Mr. Einfeld.
Nay.
Mr. Kinzinger.
Nay.
Mr. Wheeler.
Nay.
Motion
You know
fails.
the direction to
Right.
take.
So
Okay.
so repeat that again so I'm clear. So I can go ahead and post it and
Right.
interview it, and then pending the budget either move forward with hiring or not.
Right.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sandy.
You want a motion for that, Mike?
I don't think we need one on that,
Make a
do we?
replacement and put it.
Well, we're not really spending anything, and she's just gonna, I don't think we need one, do we?
No, because that budget number was already approved. That was already in the
Yeah,
budget.
I don't think we need one.
You agree? Yeah. You agree?
Okay, next we have a request from the coroner's office.
This is confusing.
Everybody
I
off?
would say stop after the third line.
Turn 4 off.
Really?
Okay, we're getting hit with a double barrel here. I don't know. Might be a pressure putting on us, double barrel. Yeah. Oh, I'm a nay. I'm a nay, right? Just, excuse me. Make sure that when this goes around that you sign it in the right column on the last vote. Because a lot of times people will sign the aye when they said nay or nay when they said aye. But
Okay, I put in for a full-time person. Back in 2013, I lost my full-time position when he left our office. Because of the county had a freeze on, I never have touched it. The office has basically weathered the storm. But in the last 3 years, it's been unbelievable what's going on in our office. Our autopsies are extremely up right now, as it looks like if we come in at the end of November, adding roughly 30 more autopsies on than what we were scheduled to go is roughly about $50,000. And you got to remind yourself that there's so much more investigation now. We're out on the streets a little bit more. A lot of these are very complicated cases, what we're doing. We've been because of the epidemic that's in the county, we've been all over the county trying to prevent deaths. That's my job to basically do. We've touched all over, like I said, all over the county, and we're continuing almost 3 events per week just about that we're having, not only in schools to churches to trying to get this out of the problem we're having. We're going to hit, as I told you at the beginning, that I thought we'd run right around 51. We're going to hit over 60 overdoses. I checked yesterday at Will. They're at 77. I checked DePage at 98. And I checked it down in Champaign, which is 38 to maybe 40 that they might think they're going to have. We're at 112,000. And that's where we're at right now. That's astronomical of a big problem we have. And both of us have been working extremely hard. It's a lot of stress built onto us, but we're making it. And I'm asking that I need to have a full-time person, because I want to also tell you that we did receive, you talked about money-wise, we did receive $225,000 grant, which when Eric and I go out to speak, they're paying us for it. I don't get it out of it doesn't go into my pocket, it goes into the general fund. We just deposited $600 into the general fund for the teaching that we did in the last week. Not only is that's going to be very helpful, equipment that we needed to have, county doesn't have to buy it, we'll buy it out of the 225. So we're getting another laptop and along with the screen, so when we go to different places that don't have it, we at least can provide that, and that doesn't cost us anything. We also, as you know, that I have the coroner's fees. In the last 3 years, I put $100,000 into the county that you would have had to pay for. 2 cars, X-ray machine that we were out. It was deleted on all the different formulas, so we had to go digital. The portable radios that we bought that you have to have, and coming up here in the next few years, everybody has to have a new radio system. Also in the car radios, we had to buy the car radios, which are much more expensive. We got them at a pretty good pace right now. We got a good deal out of it. I painted our offices at them more because they were down over 12 years. by a union people that came in and did that. That was paid for out of my funds. I've just got through cleaning the morgue. It hasn't been touched on in 12 years. We clean it. My staff cleans it because of the bloodborne passages. That's all cleaned up and looking extremely well. And that was done by Service Pro. And our entire staff helps us clean at all times. We're bringing in, and I'm going to show you because that's why I got Eric that does most of my payroll. I'm going to show you what we can do for the county. And I'm constantly, you know, Chairman, how much I am for the county, and I watch all the meetings. And when I have people that have questions, a lot of people don't come out to see us, but I understand that. But it's been very busy. I also just got off the phone with NMS Labs that we're going to shoot us another 4%. Because of Cook County and because of being secretary of the Illinois Corners, I was able to spot that, called NMS Labs and told them, look, you can't give us another 4% when we just got you Cook County, the Illinois Corners, which is the biggest prize that they got. Was Cook County is a huge. Now they said instead of that we're going to go 1%. So that's, again, we're saving money. I'm asking for a full-time, and I'm going to tell you how much it's going to cost the county. Very good.
So everybody have a sheet. I think it was in the packet Diane sent out. So right now we would pay a part-time employee to cover the shift that the full-time employee would cover, $32,110. Whereas the full-time employee will cost $38,293. That's what the salary will be. So a difference of $61.83 additional. When we met with Steve McCarty and did our budget request, we included that in there. I worked with Lynn Mackin and Chris Kerner at Finance about figuring out benefit costs. Kind of one of the curveballs to this whole situation is that one of our part-time employees, who will be 14 years with us next April, is about to retire, and we believe he would like this job if it's approved. So we're talking no training costs, which is savings alone there. But another kind of curveball to it is that when he does retire, the money that he has accrued in sick days and vacation time that's not used, he does not get paid for. It goes into a separate account that then pays for health insurance for him and his spouse. So him looking at the amount of money he will have paid health insurance for him and his spouse for the next 3 to 4 years. So again, an additional savings. So if we look at the total benefit cost of $17,623 and we take out what the county's insurance portion is, that leaves $82.31. That's the IMRF, the unemployment, Social Security, whatever the other deductions are that come out. So total package wise for an additional employee, we're looking at just under $14,500 to add on. About $6,200 of it comes from our portion of it, and the remaining $8,200 would come out of the county's part for those benefits. But again, with this grant that's been thrown in there too, a lot of our salaries being reimbursed, which will help offset some of those new costs. So that grant expires on June 30th, and we've already been talking to the health department about reapplying for the grant cycle, which would start again on July 1st through the next year. So that's all I have.
Chairman?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. First of all, it doesn't fall on deaf ears, the amount of money you spend out of the Corners Fund. Special funds, you're not hoarding is not the right word, but you're not just using it on, leaving it sit there in a kitty. You're actually using it on things to save, because we'd have to buy the vehicles. We'd have to buy the body bags or whatever you're buying out of that fund. So that's not lost on me. That's a $100,000 savings to the county over 3 years, direct, that the finance committee needs to know about. Now, this 3%, is that the savings, 4% down to 1%, does that increase over what their current costs are charges? This NMS or
what was it?
He said that they were going to charge us 4%, but it's going to be 1%.
Down to one, a 2 year, 1 and 1.
Yeah, that's an increase, but how much of a savings?
$2,500.
$2,500. Okay, so that kind of adds into this a little bit. So do you see this, if you were balancing everything out, as a cost neutral proposition? Because I'm trying to do the numbers in my head versus what you have saved us versus what you project to be coming in that we don't have to pay from other sources. Because that matters to this decision, because you're just taking a part-time to full-time. This isn't, anything else but, and then the extra benefits that you're adding onto it with the vacation and things like that. So that's why I'm tending to support it, because it seems like there's already things you're doing to spend extra money out of your department to support what you do that we would have to. Does that make sense, the way I put it? I mean, it's kind of convoluted, but it's true. Because we're statutorily, we have to pay for that stuff. So that's why I would support this move. Are you looking at doing it when this gentleman retires? Is that your timeline? Is that kind of what you're thinking?
He's due to retire very quickly.
Okay, so it might be a December 1st thing.
Could be.
Roughly, okay. All right, that's all I had.
Go ahead.
Thank you, gentlemen. You've included this in your budget projection or next year's budget?
Correct.
Make a motion to approve the coroner's request.
Okay. Second, Mr. Hess. Okay, we have motion and second. Any more discussion? Any other discussion? Okay, roll call.
Mr. Largess.
Aye.
Mr. Vickery. Mr. Washington. Mr. Stauffenberg. Did he leave? Okay. Mr. Hess. Mr. Searoy. Ms. Weber. Mr. Payton. Mr. Einfeld. Mr. Kinzinger. Mr. Wheeler. Motion carries.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much. Thank you. Have a nice day.
Answer this one.
Let's see. Moving on, any old business? You have an old business? We have new business. Mr. Kinzinger?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Recently I learned about the Amazon proposal, and I would like to recognize county board leadership, particularly Andy Wheeler, who then reached out to Ms. Lindsay Parkhurst. Definitely out of the box thinking, and in the words of one commercial realtor, the most innovative idea that he's heard in recent time. It's that kind of leadership that will make the county as great as it has the potential to be. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, is there any other new business? I do have a question. Can a motion to adjourn be made by proxy by Mr. Mulcahy, who's not here? Oh, you have something? Okay, think that over, Andy.
Thank you, Chairman. It's just a reminder, if for those that don't know, that Friday night is the drug court auction. It's a fundraiser for those people. So I haven't talked to Mr. Latham yet, but I bet you he's got some tickets that he'd like to sell.
I'd like to see you afterwards.
And in honor of Mr. Mulcahy, I would make a motion on his behalf.
I will accept that on behalf of Mr. Mulcahy. So we have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Hess, seconded by Mr. Searoy. You got in. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, we're adjourned. Thank you.